We're live, different time, but the same people, and we cannot wait to talk about UFC 274. Absolutely buzzing for this card. Two title fights, loads of weight drama. We all made weight. We're all ready to go. We're all ready to talk. But before we get into it, I want to introduce you to our good friends, All Real Nutrition Bars. Head on over there to eatallreal.com. Put in the code word severe MMA. Grab yourself some bars. Get some protein into your body. Get yourself ready for the fights tonight. You're going to need it. We're buzzing. Everyone else should be buzzing. Let's get to it. Straight in, guys. The biggest talking point. Maybe it was fate that we couldn't record on Thursday. Maybe it was fate that something like this, and I look up to the MMA gods and say, why can't we do this the easy way? Why can't we do it the easy way? Charles Oliveira missed weight and threw all the main event into a tizzy, threw Twitter into a tizzy. Everyone's up in arms. Should he be stripped? Shouldn't he be stripped? Was the scales right? Was the scales messed up? I mean, I just think it's a shame that all of this is taken away from the fantastic fight that these two guys are going to have, no matter what. Don't forget about the weight, forget about anything. The logistics of it and the rules say that he has to be stripped. Yes, this is a shit situation, but that's where we're at right now. Spencer, I'll go to you first. I want to get both of your thoughts on the weight debacle that has been going on. Just give me your overall consensus on what's going on here.
We've seen enough people kind of show up knowing that they're going to be over, or show up knowing that it's a very real possibility that they're going to be over, with that look on their face where they, it's just the assumed, like they get up there and they look depressed and they look sad, and more sad and depressed than they look when they're cutting weight anyways. And I know Harry will talk on why weight cutting is miserable. But the look on Charles Oliveira's face was one of complete surprise. And that to me was the interesting piece, because we then had fighters come out and a couple Brazilians reach out to Guilherme Cruz at MMA Fighting and say, look, that scale we were told was 0.5 off. And that's what Charles Oliveira missed by. And as you said, the logistics of it are that he has to be stripped. That's the rules. He missed weight. He couldn't get down to 155 in that hour. Everybody that is doing the he had time can fuck right off, because you've never tried to cut a pound in an hour. And it's miserable. It's absolutely miserable. I haven't done it, and it's miserable. And it sucks that this is the way it is, and that if he wins tonight, we end up having a vacant belt and a championship fight later this year to crown another new champion. But that's the rule set. That's the regulations that are in place. Justin Gaethje made weight, so he's eligible for the title. I understand that, there were a bunch of fighters that made weight. And it's really just been interesting to watch sort of the Twitter discussion and the pundit discussion of, was the scale off? And if it was, does that just mean everybody else overshot? Which is, it's weird to me that nobody believes, or a lot of people believe, that many fighters didn't overshoot and didn't mismanage their weight cut to where they cut too much, because it's impossible to them that so many fighters maybe were on weight. It's a weird situation. I hope it doesn't have any real impact on the fight tonight, on the performance tonight. I don't think it will. It's not like Charles Oliveira looked tremendously different than he has in his past couple of fights. It's not one of those instances where it felt like he was absolutely thrashed getting down to 55.5. So I hope we still get the fight that we were all expecting tonight. And this weight miss and situation just becomes a footnote that we deal with and we talk about a little bit going forward. But hopefully everything continues to go as planned, because this is a phenomenal and just such an intriguing fight.
Unbelievable fight. I agree with you, and very well said as well. Like, one thing, and I agree with you. I hope it doesn't affect this fight too much. But that being said, it's a lot to have gone through for Charles Oliveira, a guy that we would have questioned his mentality in the past, and going up thinking you're on weight, thinking you're going to defend your title, all of that is gone. Hopefully it doesn't hit him in the pocket, but you never know what the UFC are going to do. They're saying that he's going to be champion right up until the starting bell goes tonight, or not even bell. The referee just. I'm thinking too much boxing here, to be honest. But hopefully it doesn't hit him in the pocket. That's something that I don't want. Like you mentioned, the fact that he missed weight and he has to get that title strip. That's the rules. The circumstances around that, we can ask many questions. As Sean Denny said, 20 fighters came in a half a pound on the scales, which raises flags to me. And Harry, I'm going to go over to you. I know you're a big proponent of weight cutting. You don't like it at all. I'm going to give you your 2 cents. What do you think of this whole situation? Has it taken a little bit from the fight from you?
So I think I want to touch a little bit on what you said about what Spencer said about the Twitter conversations that were happening between MMA media members and fans. And Shawnee Podcasts and I recorded an episode of the Speaker's Corner that will come out, I imagine, in a couple of weeks or so. And some of the things we were talking about is the way that there is a lack of empathy for fighters, especially in the sphere of fans. And fans watch fights, but they don't really care for what happens before they get to the cage, unless the walkout is good. And then they don't really care about what happens after the fight. All the talk about fighters, as soon as they win or lose, is either their shit or it's who are they going to fight next. Very little is made about how they're able to manage their weight going forwards, how the entire rehydration process is, how the whole weight cut process is, the camp goes. All of that isn't sold by the marketing machine of the UFC, so people don't think about it. But if you're Charles Oliveira, you've gone and put 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 8 weeks into a camp. You've brought your body down. You've cut weight overnight. You've not slept. If anyone hasn't cut weight, maybe this isn't the right place to talk, but I've cut from 73 kilos to 57 kilos twice in my life. And I can tell you that it's brutal. It is brutal. So we can talk about that another time. But obviously, I don't have anywhere near the experience of doing an MMA camp and then cutting weight. But for Charles Oliveira to come down after having cut weight, stand on 2 UFC commissioned scales, find out he's 155, confidently walk out, then weigh 155.5, and nobody question. Nobody from the back would be able to hear the announcer and doesn't come out and says, well, something's wrong because he's weighed 155 here. Why? Like, what are we doing? Right? And to labor the point that Spencer just mentioned, and I'll go on to what I think about the fight and how I think it affects it in a second, is for anyone that hasn't cut weight, to try and get your body to start sweating after it's insanely dehydrated and you've then stopped sweating is incredibly difficult. At that point of dehydration, at that point of exhaustion, there is very little that your body will want to do. It's in survival mode. Your body starts to shut down when you're that depleted. To then ask it to again start to sweat and release water from organs and glands and your brain is a very, very tough task for you to do. Now,
almost impossible, I would say.
Almost impossible. Yeah. Without the use of things like Diorolite or, specific things that are absolutely banned on the USADA list, it is almost impossible for you to get that weight out. Now, how does it affect the fight? I don't think we know that. That's an unknown variable. We can talk about it, but it's almost like a conversation between mates at a pub. We won't know until Charles Oliveira steps in there, and we won't know actually until he steps back out and starts talking to us, what sort of mental toll it took on him to go through the weight cut, go downstairs, step out confidently in front of everyone, and then miss weight and be told that he has to go and recut the weight, to then go back to his hotel room and deal with the exhaustion, the lack of energy, the pain that he was in to try and cut weight again. We won't know what the mental stress is. We just won't. But you're absolutely right. I completely agree that we have to strip him of the title. Those are the rules. He signed a contract to those rules. I have no problem with the weight strip, with the title strip, because those are the rules. But what I do ask is for a bit of empathy for Charles Oliveira. At the end of the day, he's cut weight just like everyone else has. He was confident he made weight, and now he's going to go into a fist fight with a killer like Justin Gaethje, and we're all here talking shit about him on Twitter. It's not okay.
Do you think, Harry, that some of the past weight misses kind of in this situation, at least anyway, has kind of come back to haunt him a little bit? But
Absolutely.
I'm not suggesting that this is. I would put this down to a miscalculation, a fuck up in the back, not down to unprofessionalism, not down to an injury, not down to anything else. It's just a very, very unfortunate situation, and I just really hope. Like, I just wanted to fucking come in here. Both these guys make way. We talked about the fight. This whole thing is kind of just taken over everything now, and I hope that it doesn't take too much out of the fight. I'll stick with you. Give me your thoughts on the fight. What you're thinking. I know you've been going over and back. I think we all have been going over and back.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see what happens. What do you think happens in this main event?
Genuinely, I don't know. I really don't. I think it can go one of many ways. I've watched a bit of tape on both, and I've thought about this fight since it was announced. The narrative that Justin Gaethje is a zombie that walks forward is a bit of a fallacy, I think. When you go back and watch the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, he's backpedaling the entire time. Now, this is a man that's famed for his striking and his defensive wrestling, but he's succumbed if that's a word, or succumbed to Khabib's footwork and pressure, right? Now, that fight was far more competitive than I think people remember on the feet. He landed some wonderful leg kicks, as we know he does, and he hurt Khabib's pretty badly, I would say. Then we saw the shot. Khabib almost finished it in the first round with the bicep slicer, and then obviously, did what he did in the second round. And we can talk about the grappling deficiencies of Justin Gaethje a little bit later. I think I'll be a little bit more flowy this one. For Charles Oliveira against Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira tried to take center stage. Poirier clips him with the right hook, and Oliveira was like, "Oh, okay, I don't want to be here anymore." But Oliveira fought all the way into the pocket with Dustin Poirier, trying clinch uppercuts, being right in Poirier's face, standing absolutely foot on top of foot. Well, that's exactly where Justin Gaethje wants you to be, right? Justin Gaethje, for the longest time, before he had his eye surgery, was like, I can't see anyone. So if they stand in front of me, I can hit them. And if I hit them, I know where they are. I mean, if you're Charles Oliveira stepping into the pocket like that, you're going to get whacked by Justin Gaethje. And I think that Dustin Poirier is a big hitter, but he's not a big hitter like Justin Gaethje is. Charles Oliveira is very hittable, and Justin Gaethje is very submittable, right? So before I sort of do the nuts and crannies, I mean, what do you guys think? Like, I'm very undecided about how this goes. I think we'll know very early on how it goes, but I'm very undecided how it goes.
I think that's the beauty of this fight, really. It's that, the unknowns is what really gets me excited about fights. Bruce had just said, there's some fights that are predictable. When we saw Volkan Zombie, we knew that there was a gap in talent there, and we knew that Volkanovski was probably going to beat Korean Zombie, and if he didn't, it would have been a massive upset. It's just, this fight is so close, and it has so many different ways that it can go. But I truly feel, and I'll go to you, Spencer, I really feel that round one is going to be the most important round in this fight. Just give me your thoughts on how you think it's going to go, Spencer.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I think that first round, and we've seen it in the last couple Charles Oliveira fights, right? It goes out, Mike Chandler clips him. That gets dicey for most of that round. And there's moments where he's on his back and it's, Charles Oliveira grappling. But Chandler dominates most of that round, wins that round in everybody's scorecard. And then Charles Oliveira comes out and finishes. Same with the Dustin Poirier fight, as Harry said. Goes out, tries to mix it up with Dustin Poirier kind of on his turf. Doesn't work out so well, and then he decides, this isn't for me. I'm gonna do Charles Oliveira things. And so I think everything does come down to not even just the first 5 minutes, but probably the first 90 seconds. Because Justin Gaethje is going to come out there like hell on wheels, trying to take this man out in a heartbeat and just make his life miserable from the jump. And we're going to have to see. I mean, Gaethje said this week, and I think it's crazy. I think Charles Oliveira has proven, especially over these last couple fights, that his ability to deal with adversity is not the same as earlier in his career. He has learned from those previous mistakes. But Gaethje came out and had the once a coward, always a coward line. And he's going to come out and see if there's still cowardice in that man's heart. The interesting piece and why I love this fight and why we all love this fight is we've seen Charles Oliveira deal with that in the last couple fights and then come back and defeat and finish two elite world-class lightweight competitors that Justin Gaethje didn't finish. That Justin Gaethje, like, he beat Michael Chandler, but it was more of a fight than people kind of want to remember. Maybe that's because Justin Gaethje decides Justin Gaethje didn't like that fight. He didn't like his performance. And so maybe it's that Gaethje just decides I'm not going to waste my time going crazy in this fight trying to get this guy out of here because I can't. Whatever. But the thing that's interesting, as you said, these first 5 minutes, the first 90 seconds, super interesting. And the thing with Charles Oliveira, especially lately, is he's got a little bit of that Damian Maia in him, where let me just get my hands on you somewhere, anywhere. Let me get a body lock. Let me get, over under. Let me just get a hold of you, and then I start. And then you're in trouble. Because the minute I have a hold of you, you're in trouble. And it's going to be interesting to see if Oliveira can avoid that Gaethje rush and if Gaethje can avoid kind of the clutches early. And I can't wait. Like, hurry up and get here.
Unbelievable. I can't wait either. It's brilliant. I mean, look, there's lots of talk. So I'm going to bring you in, Harry, just to kind of talk about the nooks and crannies. There's something I just wanted to mention is that there is a lot of talk about Charles's mentality coming in here, the growth he's shown in his mentality. But, we got to talk about Justin Gaethje's mentality coming in here as well, because he has been in there against Eddie Alvarez. He's been in there against Dustin Poirier. He's got knocked out in 2 of those fights. He went in there again against Khabib and got submitted. Close enough for a while, but it was a bit of a whitewash towards the end once the fight hit the ground. What's his mentality going to be? How much is the threat of the takedown from Charles Oliveira going to take away from Justin Gaethje? Is he going to go in hell for leather? Is he going to leave himself open? I don't see Charles Oliveira going in and double leg taking him down. I would more so see Charles, would you think? Or I'd be more so looking for a body lock takedown for Charles where he can go and scoot to the back straight away. I think that's where you're going to be looking to try and get in Justin Gaethje when you're down the ground. But it's hard to get Justin Gaethje's back to defense because he's such a good forward moving fighter. I mean, Harry, I just want to bring you in now and say, what do you think that Charles Oliveira has to do in round 1 to kind of fend off the forward pressure of Justin Gaethje and to try and get this fight down to the ground?
So I'm going to say something. It's going to sound fucking wild, but stay with me, okay? Charles Oliveira has to go out there and be Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, I said it was wild, okay? I said it was wild. What do I mean by that? So in the initial throngs of the fight with Khabib, Gaethje was imminently, not fearful, that's the wrong word, but concerned by the threat of the takedown, as you would be fighting somebody like Khabib Nurmagomedov. Now, there was a couple of exchanges where Khabib tried more conventional takedowns, single legs, double legs, those sorts of things, front headlock attacks, and Gaethje was able to defensively wrestle really, really well. He ducked his head out. He kept his inside frames. He kept his hips away. He looked good. He looked fine. But the pressure from Khabib, in my opinion, by the end of the first round, Gaethje was exhausted. And Khabib wasn't hitting him with massive shots. He wasn't hitting him with loads of shots either, especially not when we're talking about a Justin Gaethje fight. But Justin looked exhausted. The way that Khabib was able to move through Justin Gaethje's guard in that first round, Justin's inability to look for underhooks, regular frames, bringing his knees to his chest, keeping knee-elbow connection, was abysmal. Now, there's only 2 things I can think of for that. Either an incompetence in Gaethje's grappling skills, which it absolutely could be, or complete exhaustion. What did we see in the second round? Habib went exactly back to the well. And I've made a few notes here, and we'll just talk about them slightly, about how the actual takedown in the second round led to the submission. So Habib eventually gets Justin down, right? He catches a kick into a takedown attempt. Justin sprawls. Again, sprawls from a conventional MMA takedown. Grab a kick, looks for a takedown, he sprawls. Lovely. What does Habib do? Ducks out the side, eventually comes to Justin's back. Justin concedes, right? Concedes the bottom position. And from here, it's just everything goes wrong, right? He doesn't negate head control. He doesn't look for inside frames. He doesn't look to get bicep ties. He does nothing, essentially. He doesn't even try to buck or bridge to try and bring himself to a position where he can look for frames. He just sort of accepts the position. Now, again, that's my question. Is that an incompetence thing, or is that an exhaustion thing? The smash pass into the mount should never have happened, right? Habib didn't have a full head and arm. He just had an underhook and a bicep tie. He's in the smash pass, and Justin does nothing with his frames again. He just lays there. Habib manages to bring his left knee to the hip and just slide right into mount. And from mount, I mean, forget about it. It was done almost immediately, right? Habib went straight to a high guard, isolated his elbows above his shoulders, and then he just did whatever he wanted, right? What he could have armbarred, he could have triangled, he could have done whatever he wanted. And it was poor, right? It was a poor showing. Now, the concession for Justin Gaethje was that exhaustion. We've never really seen Gaethje act the way he acted against Habib. Against Tony, he started just by throwing hell for leather. Chandler the same, Poirier the same, Eddie Alvarez the same. And Trevor Whitman, thankfully, dragged him back a little bit in the Tony Ferguson thing. But there was very little respect for what the other competitor had to offer from Justin Gaethje. It felt like there was way too much respect for Habib. Now, if I'm Charles Oliveira, my deficiencies are getting clipped in the pocket, something that Justin Gaethje is fantastic at. But like Spencer's already mentioned, I think if you just try to conventionally take Justin Gaethje down, ankle picks, single legs, double legs, especially out in open space, good luck. Good luck taking him down. So it's going to be body locks from clinches. It's going to be drags. It's going to be head snaps. It's going to be shooting with shots. I mean, like with straight punches, hooks, kicks, whatever, and then ending up in there. It's going to be jiu-jitsu / takedowns, jiu-jitsu style takedowns. Sorry. I think
it'll be the scrambles in this.
Right.
The scrambles are going to be the most important thing, but it's up to Charles Oliveira to create those scrambles. Justin Gaethje isn't going to be looking to create those scrambles. It's going to have to be, I was going to call him the champ. I guess he still is the champ at this stage. So it's going to have to be Oliveira that creates them.
Absolutely. It's a footwork battle for Oliveira. If he can negotiate pressure footwork without getting clipped and pressure Gaethje so that he feels like a takedown is coming. And look, if I'm Charles Oliveira, throw a couple of takedowns at him. If he stuffs them and sprawls, you could pull guard. If he's going to, what's the worst that's going to happen? He's going to stand you up. Fine, you go again. I would be very shocked unless Gaethje had Oliveira really hurt, and this is something I was going to talk about after, even if he has him really hurt, why would you contend with him on the ground? Why? If he's turned his back and dropped to all fours and you're ground and pounding him out, fine. If you've hurt him and he drops to close guard, just leave him, get him up. And the same, I think, will work in favor for Charles Oliveira. If you can pull guard and create scrambles, wrestle up, which is something that's happening massively in sport jiu-jitsu. If you can start to wrestle up and look for Gaethje's back, if you can pressure footwork him and bait Gaethje into exchanging in the pocket and use those pocket exchanges to look for your takedowns, to look for your back exposure, it's going to be a one-way street. Now, the one thing I will say, and this will be the final thing I will say, is Oliveira isn't a great takedown artist. He's not a great grappler, but he's a submission specialist, right? He's a jiu-jitsu specialist. To me, that's not all-encompassing of grappling. If he finds a sniff of a guard pass or a sniff of his back, you're going to find Charles Oliveira deep in on anything that Gaethje leaves available. And if what we saw in the Habib match, or the Habib fight, his submission defense isn't great. And that's what makes it fascinating to me, is the transitions of how we get to where both of these guys want to be.
It is. It's that killer instinct that we see. We see it sometimes when a fighter gets hurt on the feet. Whoever hurts that fighter has that killer instinct to go in, land those finishing blows. It's like with Oliveira's submission game, he has exactly the same thing, where he'll just look for those minor openings, and then it's over before you even fucking know it. Spencer, in one word, we've gone through it all. We've gone through all the nooks and crannies. Who do you think takes this fight? I'll give you more than one word if you really need it, but who do you think takes this fight?
I think Oliveira gets it. I think it looks similar to the Michael Chandler fight and the Dustin Poirier fights, where he has to deal with adversity. Justin Gaethje's going to hit him. As Harry said, he's hittable. He's a guy that is going to take damage. He is going to take some shots. But I think he's shown that he can deal with that. And as Harry said as well, the minute he sees something, the minute there's a crack of an opening, I think he's climbing on Justin Gaethje's back and locking up a body triangle and just going to work and just waiting for Justin to make mistakes. And I think Justin makes a mistake.
I can't even add anything to that. That's exactly the way I see it going as well. I mean, he's going to have to come through the fire, and he's going to have to find the opening, and I think he eventually does it, whether it be towards the end of the second round or in round 3. I'd be very surprised to see this fight go the full distance one way or another, to be honest. I think it's going to be, if you're putting money down, it's got to be Gaethje by KO, and it's got to be Charles Oliveira by submission. I think that Charles has enough to get it done, and that's my opinion. Harry, you broke it down from both ways. You've switched over and back. Now is the defining moment, my friend. Who are you going for? Who do you think does it?
I think Justin Gaethje takes it. I think something that we haven't spoken about, but I think that could be a big variable here. We talked about confidence and we talked about respect for the other fighter. I think Justin saying what he said about once a coward, always a coward. And I think him seeing Oliveira miss weight is going to boost his confidence dramatically. I think that means he's going to throw his shots, and I think he's going to allow Oliveira to come to him, and I think he's going to meet him in the pocket. He hits extremely hard, and it only takes one for Oliveira to start panic shooting. And I think the panic shots can be defended much, much easier than a scramble can. The power difference is crazy. And we know that Dustin Poirier took a lot of shots against Charles Oliveira, but we know that Justin Gaethje can take a bag of shots. I just have a sneaky feeling. My head is telling me that Charles Oliveira should have enough to get this done, but I can't shake this sneaky feeling that Justin Gaethje is going to land some big shots and get it done.
Yeah, indeed. Fair call. I mean, it can go anyway. It's going to be a fantastic fight. Fuck the weight cut. Fuck the scales. Concentrate on the fight.
Fuck weight cut.
Phenomenal. And that's, you had to get it in. On to the next fight, which is for the strawweight title, a rematch around 7 years in the making. I think, another fascinating fight. I mean, this is certainly not going to be a walk in the park for Rose Namajunas. I think, she can, she can, I think the key to this fight, and it's as simple as this: if Rose can manage to keep it on the feet, she will win this fight relatively easy. But Carla has found a way time and time again to get her opponents down and to grind on them. And I think if she kind of can manifest her game plan in this fight, it's not really going to be an entertaining fight, because she's going to try and close the distance, and use her grappling and her clinch to slow Rose down. She's not going to want to stand and bang with Rose. The technical aspects of both of their striking games are massively, massively apart. Carla Esparza's route to this is closing the distance, getting the fight down, getting Rose on her back, making things awkward for her, and Rose is keeping it up on the feet and getting off that jab. And I think that's the more likely outcome, in my opinion, in this fight, is that Rose can keep it up on the feet and land those damaging blows. We won't go straight into how the fight will go yet. Spencer, give me your outlook on this fight, some of the questions that you're asking yourself, and how you see the fight kind of playing out.
So I think it's really interesting, and I got to talk to Carla before this fight. I think it's really interesting kind of the way that a lot of people have forgotten about Carla Esparza as the first champion in this division, and as somebody that has been as dominant as she's been and as consistently successful as she's been. She's been in the top 10 for a dozen years. She's been in the top 5 really for about 10 of those, and is one of the best strawweights of all time. There's no debating that. And so it's been interesting to see people kind of come around and remember that about Carla Esparza this week. I'm a little surprised by the number of people picking Carla Esparza to win this week. And that's not because I don't see a path to victory for Esparza, as you said, and as Harry laid out wonderfully on the one-man booth this week. There are avenues, there are opportunities. We've seen that, and especially we saw it in her last fight against Yan Jianan, right? Turned it up a notch. And when I talked to her about it, she said, yeah, I was 100% pissed off of constantly having the goalposts moved. Like, just tired of hearing, go in one more, we're not sure. So I went out there and I did what I had to do. And I think she still carries that into this fight. But if we're going in terms of development, and again, as Harry laid out on the one-man booth, if we're going in terms of development from the first fight, if we're going in terms of overall weapons, there's just an abundance for Rose Namajunas. And so it comes down to me, to how well she sticks to the game plan, how well she removes some of the pieces of what she does well, because there are weapons and tools that she cannot use against Carla Esparza. There cannot be any lazy kicks. There cannot be any naked kicks, because Carla Esparza will catch that and put you on her back. And once you're there for the rest of the round, or until she finishes you. We haven't seen Rose Namajunas create a lot of scrambles and be a great defensive fighter off her back. And so for Rose, to me, this all comes down to pump the jab, throw the high kicks if you want to, box her up, and just keep moving. Look like she did in the early stages of the Joanna and Jacek fights. Just get out there and be moving around the cage, cutting angles, picking Carla Esparza apart. And if she can do that, I think, as you said, it can be a fairly clean one-way fight. But there's always that question.
There certainly is. And, apart from the last Zhang Weili fight, there was some grappling exchanges and that, but a lot of Rose's previous fights have just played out on the feet. They've kind of suited her style, where, she didn't have to worry about what Spencer was saying and maybe throwing the odd lazy kick or anything like that. And I mean, she's all one thing, and if there was any chink in Rose's game, was that, when she's not fighting to her own pace and to the tune of the fight that she wants to fight, that her gas tank can teeter a little bit towards the end of fights. We've seen that against Jessica Andrade. We've seen that a couple of times before. The big theme, I think, coming into tonight's fights was mentality. We're talking about mentality of Charles Oliveira. We're talking about mentality of Rose Namajunas, and to kind of buck that trend, both of them seem to have got their mental game right, which is so important. But you can get your mental game right, and you can just have one slip up in a fight, and all your mental game goes out the window. Like Spencer said, Rose cannot afford to get too comfortable in this fight, because if she does end up on her back, I truly believe that she's going to be able to keep her there. She's going to want to keep her back off the cage in this fight. She's going to want to just, I would like to just see her going out there and boxing Carla Esparza and throwing very little kick. In the clinch, maybe you can throw your knees, maybe you can throw your elbows, but you're asking for trouble if you're kicking here. I think, that's what makes it intriguing to me. But talking about Rose's mental game, she has the mentality that she knows she's the best now. Now she wants to be the greatest. I love hearing that from Rose. But, I mean, styles make fights is the classic saying, and this is a difficult stylistic matchup for her, but after having been defeated before, I think she has enough burning desire to kind of go out and prove that she is good enough and that she has progressed as a fighter. And that moves me over to you, Harry, that you excellently there's no better breakdown in this fight than the one-man boot. If you've not listened to that, it's available for free on spearmma.com Patreon. Go and listen to Harry's breakdown of this fight, where he tells the full story about the progress and the growth of both of these fighters, and truly the growth of Rose Namajunas coming in here. And we might not have an hour now, Harry, to discuss it, but please, we give us the nooks and crannies of your thought process coming in and your breakdown of this fight.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the kind words, both of you. So, first of all, this is nowhere near the same fight as the first one. Rose is an absolutely, completely different fighter. Carla Esparza is the same fighter at the fabric of her style. She's just bolted on some evolutionary steps along the way. I think that, frankly, this should be a one-sided fight, as you guys have already said. Rose's footwork is far superior. She hits harder. She has straighter shots. Her ability to move her head in and out of the pocket is far superior. She has a greater kicking arsenal. She has a greater clinch arsenal. But Carla's a dog, She's got that dog in her, as Paul Felder would say. And Carla mainly has two setups for takedowns. One is very naked, very far out. She'll change levels and she'll drive, and she has an incredible double leg power drive, and she'll just run you to the fence, and then she'll work her chain wrestling. I don't think that's going to be super successful against Rose, providing that, as Ian, you've already said, the mentality of Rose stays bulletproof. I think where this gets interesting is Carla is often very happy to have pocket exchanges to then shoot and land and cut angles. She cuts angles on takedowns so beautifully, and they make them effortless. And when she lands generally in dominant positions with grips that she's comfortable with. If I'm to be critical of Rose Namajunas, it is certainly in her defensive grappling, as you guys have already said. There's very often a lack of a get-up game. There's very often a lack of scooting to the fence, getting your hips underneath you and getting up. It's very, very seldom even what I would call a comprehensive grappling game from the bottom. We're not throwing up submissions. She's not trying to strike off her back very often. It's all about space, really. She uses frames, her leg frames, and just tries to keep people away as much as possible, land an up kick here and there. In the Zhang Weili fight, she was taken down a number of times with trips from the clinch. I don't think that we're going to see that against Carla, as she's much more of a traditional fundamental single-double type wrestler. But on the feet, it's way, way, way outmatched, and Carla has to find Rose's hips. She has to use the reads. She makes excellent reads on stance switches. That's one of the hidden gems of Carla Esparza's game, is her ability to make reads on her opponent's stance switches. And she catches fighters square and drives on their hips. And as soon as you're square with Carla Esparza, lower than your belly button, you're probably sitting down very, very quickly after. The final wrinkle I'll say on that, because I'm repeating the one-man booth now, and you will have me here for an hour, is...
Go and listen to it, folks. You got to do it.
Sure, please do. Rose has added something to her game that I think will stifle a lot of the reads that or at least the timing that Esparza has. And that's, Rose no longer doesn't exit the pocket with square hips. She exits the pocket on a curve of changing stances. So she goes from orthodox to southpaw to orthodox as she's cutting those circles. And that makes the time with which her hips are square very small. So if Carla's going to shoot, she has to shoot at the perfect time. I think your point about stars make fights is absolutely right. I just think this is a tough starts matchup for Carla Esparza. I really, really do.
Especially at this stage of Rose's career, where she seems to have gotten over a lot of her mental hurdles. And the point you made about the stance switching as well is so important in this fight, but also so important in MMA in general, is giving that different look to your opponent. And it's something that we're seeing a lot more now than we have 5 years ago, and I can guarantee you we're going to fucking see it in almost every fight in another 5 years as well, because that's the way mixed martial arts is kind of transforming into right now, a growing sport, growing techniques, and new wrinkles each and every year, which makes it really exciting as a sport for us and for everybody else as well. Spencer, I'll go quickly over to you. I mean, do you think, are you kind of along the lines of Harry? I'm kind of thinking the exact same too. I just think that the growth of Rose is going to be just too much for Carla to kind of handle. I think, yeah, there might be some moments of success for Carla, but overall, I think this is Rose's fight to lose. And I think, maybe I'll ask this question. Do you think that Rose can get Carla out of there? Do you think it's going to be kind of a one-sided decision, a close decision? Like, what's your outlook on this fight?
I tend to think it's going to be a decision just because, as Harry said, Carla Esparza is a dog. She's not somebody that's going to quit. She has that resolve. And I don't think Rose is going to find kind of the one shot like she did against Joanna Jędrzejczyk in their first fight to get her out of there. I mean, we may see a high kick like we did in the Zhang Weili fight. That's always a possibility. But Rose isn't it's funny, for the dynamic finishes she's had, she's not a dynamic finisher. Those are more moments of opportunity where she's just been able to capitalize. She's not necessarily somebody that goes out there hunting for those. So I think it's going to be more likely that it's 5 rounds. Probably Carla wins 1 or 2, but Rose does enough in the others with her boxing, with her movement. And the biggest thing to me is just going to be those first couple of rounds and Trevor Whitman in the corner and Pat Barry in the corner, just reminding her to stay fundamental, stick with what works, stay on your movement. Because as you said, we've seen Rose fade in fights, and it often feels to me that it's not necessarily a cardio thing, it's a confidence thing. And as soon as that starts shifting, as soon as she gets hit with 1 or 2 bad shots, as soon as she gets put in a bad position 1 or 2 times, it's not that she starts breaking, it's that she starts questioning herself. And the moment she starts questioning herself, things can go south, and Carla Esparza will exploit that if that happens. And so I think if Rose can go out and have a good first round and a really good first round and a sharp second round as well, then we see her kind of just, it becomes a crest of momentum where she continues to build and pile up and pile up. But the minute it goes south, man, it gets way interesting. And I can't wait. Again, I can't wait. Like, just get here already. Let's start these fights now.
Let's go. Let's go. I mean, yeah, I agree what you said there. At the start of the week, we give our picks in for the website, and I did go for a Rose finish in round 4 maybe, but I am leaning more towards a decision side of things now. But it has to be said, if Rose manages to go out there and put Carla Esparza away, I think we should celebrate that, because it's not an easy thing to do. And, it'll be a real statement of intent from Rose. But it'll be interesting to see how it goes down. As we move along to the next fight, I'm going to have to take a breath here for a second, guys. This fight is unbelievable. Michael Chandler versus Tony Ferguson. I think this fight could be special, but in reality, I think the fighter that Tony Ferguson is at this stage of his career, I'm weary to see. I just don't want to see him getting beaten up for 3 rounds again. And I just have a strange feeling that that's what we're going to see in this fight. And I'm going to go to Harry Powell straight away to kind of get his thoughts. Tony took some bad beatings against Justin Gaethje. He's taken some time off. This is kind of like Mr. Company against Mr. Anti-Company this week. Mike Chandler has been all up in arms praising UFC and Dana White, whereas Tony Ferguson has been giving out about Dana White, likening him to a drug lord and all this kind of stuff. And he has every right to have those feelings and those thoughts, and good for him for speaking out about them too. A lot of fighters will have those thoughts and choose not to say anything at all, but not for Tony Ferguson. But Harry, at this stage of Tony Ferguson's career, could this be a fight where we're kind of looking at it through our hands like that, thinking, oh no, stop this fight? Because I think that Mike Chandler has the power and has the cardio and the drive to kind of put a beat down on Tony Ferguson here.
Yeah. This fight is one that will probably be pretty sad. Chandler is a dominant wrestler, good grappler. I don't think we're going to see Tony hitting the sort of dorsal anaconda entries that we've seen in the past. The cardio is never a question for either of them. I just think the wear and tear on Tony's body, full stop. All the training camps, all the fights so far. You know, he's been in some wars before the Gaethje match. The Gaethje fight specifically, something that has stuck with me forever, and it's not. There's not often moments. You know, we've sort of come accustomed to seeing fighters get knocked out and the reaction that their body makes. The reaction that Tony Ferguson's body made in that 5th round when Gaethje hit him, and his body physically shook like, please, like, stop this. His brain didn't want to stop, but his body just had enough. That's a really alarming thing for me. And I don't think the amount of time he's taken off is enough time. If your body is acting like that, the amount of time you want to take off is indefinite time. He comes in here, Michael Chandler hits very hard. He's very, very quick. He covers distance like lightning. And he can grapple. I think if Tony can roll back the years and can take some of the damage and can land the elbows on the way in and can land the knees and can chop at the legs, we could see a competitive fight. I just don't think we see one.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, this is a fight that would have been absolutely fantastic about 5 years ago. Spencer, everything that, you know, myself and Harry are kind of on the same wavelength. I don't think we're going to see the true Tony Ferguson come in here. He's at the end of his career. He's taken a lot of damage, and he's going to take some more damage in this fight too, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and it's tough to see, right? Tony has been one of everyone's favorite fighters for the last several years, and the 12-fight winning streak goes down in history as one of the best in UFC history. And it is a shame that he never fought for the undisputed title, though there are wrinkles to that. This feels to me, and there's actually a couple guys on this card that it feels like we're getting to see kind of the bad side of fighters not being able to wrestle with their own mortality and wrestle with their own place in things. I talk a lot about guys like Jim Miller and Andrei Arlovsky that accepted a few years ago that I'm not elite anymore. I can't be out there fighting these absolute killers because I'm going to get hurt. It's going to be bad, but I still want to be competitive. I still want to be out here and fight. So let me take a step back. Tony Ferguson does not have that gene. Tony Ferguson will be 55 and still tell you that he can go out there and win a world title in 6 months. It's the same way. I remember every time I talked to Diego Sanchez, he would say, I'm 2 fights away. And it's like, brother, you're just not. And I think people forget that Tony Ferguson is 38. And as Alex Lee said in his predictions today on MMA Fighting, it's a hard 38. It's not like I'm 43, but it's a real light 43. Like I haven't been put through too many trials.
Fresh looking.
Yeah, it's a baby-faced 43. Tony Ferguson is 38 going on about 62. And after, I think it's 11 rounds now where he hasn't really been competitive. And that's the piece for me, is the Oliveira fight wasn't competitive. And the Beneil Dariush fight wasn't competitive. And those guys are both absolutely world-class competitors. But Tony had nothing for them. And this is a guy that had something for everybody for years on end. And it didn't matter where he was, if he was on his back, if he was against the fence, if they were in space. He had something, and he hasn't. And that doesn't change. I agree with Harry that when your body reacts the way it did in that Gaethje fight, it's not, I need 6 months. It's, I need to be done. And I never want to advocate and tell fighters when they should retire and tell people when they should walk away. But you wonder if there's people in his corner and people in his life that just say, hey, man, it's not this. I hate to break it to you. You're not the same guy. You're not the guy that goes out there and beats these world-class fighters anymore. And I think that's the piece we see tonight is Michael Chandler goes out there and kind of drives that point home, unfortunately.
Yeah, indeed. I kind of agree as well. And, it's a very smart matchup that the UFC have put them together here, because Chandler needs a win as well coming in here, and it's a very winnable fight. It gets him back into the title picture if he does go out there and is landing some big shots, or maybe gets Tony out of there. He's right back in the mix there, and Chandler's weird. I like him. He's cringy at the best of times. You know what? I want to give him credit because he came over from Bellator and he thrown himself right into the mix there. He wanted to fight those elite level guys, and he's done it, and he's doing his thing. And yes, he's a company man, but I think at the stage of his career that he was coming into the UFC, he had to do that, man. You're not going to want to come in there and fight some of the young killers in the lightweight division. You don't want to be coming through those to try and get. You want to talk a talk, be the company man, go in against the top level guys. He's done that. He's been in some exciting fights. I think this is a fight he's going to win, and we'll see him in more exciting fights against top level guys down the line as well. So, kudos to Chandler for doing that. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Hopefully Tony doesn't take too much damage, but he probably will. And that makes me sad. Another thing that also makes me sad is the next fight. I mean,
how dare you?
I'm sorry, and I'm going to say this as a guy who came up watching Pride and having Shogun Rua being one of my utmost famous fighters. I got to see him fight live against Mark Coleman in Dublin. Just a hero, just warrior mentality, and a fantastic fighter back in the day. Like, post his knee injuries, Shogun Rua, undoubtedly the best fighter in the world, pound for pound. Undoubtedly, his run through that Grand Prix in Pride was legendary. Didn't have it all his own way when he came into the UFC, but still managed to get the title. We've not seen 10% of that Shogun in his last couple of fights. I've been talking about things that make me sad, and I agree with Harry watching Tony Ferguson. When I saw Shogun Rua, and this is no disrespect to Paul Craig, when I saw Shogun Rua tap the strikes to Paul Craig, a little piece of me died inside, and I've still not gotten it back yet. And, he's coming back in here against a fighter who has knocked him out before. And I just wish that I didn't have to watch it, to be honest, because I'm just so fearful that's going to happen again. And the likely outcome of it is that it is going to happen again. And we see it time and time again as fighters, legends just get thrown into the mix and diminished through their performances in the latter stages of their career, and it's just so sad for me to see. But speaking of Tony Ferguson's warrior mentality, Shogun obviously still has that. He's taken the spell away. He's coming in here against OSP. I'd rather not see it happen. I fear that's going to end similar enough to the first fight between the two. Harry, what's your thoughts on everything?
I mean, I don't think there's much more to add than from what you've said, to be honest. Do you know what I mean? Like, Shogun, obviously a legend. There was somebody that came out recently, I think it was Anderson Silva, and he was complaining that the UFC don't appreciate legends, or they don't appreciate the guys at the tail end of their career and what they've done for the sport, what they've done for the company. And I think he has a point. Like, okay, Ovince St. Preux probably isn't going to win a title anytime soon. He's quite a limited fighter, but what he's good at, he's pretty good at. Shogun, Paul Craig is a fighter that seemingly found who he is in and outside of the cage, and if you allow him to play his game, he's going to beat you. But Shogun tapping to strikes against Paul Craig, or let's just say being outstruck by Paul Craig, was something that concerned me also. And equally, I don't have any disrespect towards Paul Craig for that. If I'm honest, I'll probably just go and eat some snacks during this and not watch it. And then hopefully it will never happen and I won't have to see Shogun who are getting whacked. But it's hard to see how he wins the fight. Right, Ovince St. Preux is younger, both physically and biologically. I just don't know what Shogun's fighting for. He's not going to reach a title. He's not going to win a title. What are we? A paycheck, maybe, but I don't know. I don't
even know if it's a paycheck. I think maybe it's like I said, it's just his will to fight and his love to fight. And maybe he looks at this as an opportunity to get one win and go. He's not going to want to go out the way in the last fight against Paul Craig. He's not going to want to do that. He's going to want to erase those memories. But the sad reality is it very rarely fucking works out that way. You know what I mean? It goes from bad to worse in these kind of situations. And maybe I'll ask you, Spencer, is that what you expect to see tonight? I was going to say on Saturday night, because we normally record this on Thursday. Is that what you expect to see tonight? Are we going to be sad on this one too?
I think so. I mean, as Harry said, OSP is a limited fighter. It's not like Shogun's getting thrown out there with one of the killers in the division. But the fact that he's getting thrown out there with OSP and most people are having the same reaction we're having tells you where he's at, tells you kind of the state of things. And I'm in the same boat as you. I don't know why he's out here. I get the desire to compete, probably want to go out on a high, get a win and not be done, not have the last moment of your career in the UFC or not have the last moment of your career in general, be tapping to strikes to Paul Craig. Try to go out there and get one. But as you said, Ian, like that doesn't. Donald Cerrone's been trying to do that for 3 years. Get one back. We're going to talk about that in a second. It generally doesn't work. And so are there ways that Shogun could maybe get this done? Absolutely. We've seen OSP lose some fights and have some bad decision making and get caught in things like that. But is Shogun dialing back 5, 6, 8 years worth of damage and knee problems and injuries and health to find a finish like that? I don't think so. And I think the main card starts with a lot of sadness, with a lot of feeling very, it's for me, these are same as you. I think these are people I grew up watching. These are people that as I was starting, these were the guys. These were all people that I was really big on. And so it's going to be a little bit of a reminder that this game continues to advance and it's a younger man's sport for the most part. But yeah, I don't see this going any favorable way for Shogun. And that makes me sad as well, because as you said, during that Pride run, there wasn't a better fighter on the planet.
100%. And yeah, that's it. Like it was something in the midst of this conversation with the last two fights and the one that we're going to talk about right now is that, yeah, a lot of sadness, a lot of what ifs or a lot of whys are being surrounded by these three fights. And, the same can't be said about Don Cowboy Cerrone. Is he's out there, he's getting emotional this week. He's showing a side that we've not seen from him before. He's a dad now. He's done it all that he can do. He's reached his ceiling. He's had the fights. He's had some fight of the year contenders, but he hasn't had a win in his last 5 fights. And he's coming in here against Joe Lozon, and my prediction is a Lozon win. As I think that two of these guys are at similar stages of their career, but I think, as you say, age is one thing, but fight age is another thing. And the damage that you have taken throughout your career does have a detrimental effect on a fighter when you're coming towards the end. And I think that's the tale of this fight. I mean, we have fighters here that have started at similar times, have been in the UFC for a similar amount of time, but I don't think that Joe Lozon has taken the same amount of damage as Donald Cerrone. I think that he's probably in a better mental state right now when it comes to competitiveness. And I think what you said, Spencer, is just, it was excellently said, is they're chasing that last hurrah, that one final win that they can say and they can cherish forever. Nobody wants to go out on a loss, but we've seen through the test of time many times that just MMA isn't a fucking fairy tale. It can be a nightmare towards the end of your career. So, and this fight, 155 for Cerrone, he's going up and down weights too, which is giving him excuses to say, yeah, I can do it at this way, I can do it at this way. I don't think the way, let alone him fighting at this stage of his career, him cutting down to 155 at this stage of career is even worse idea, if you ask me. And I do believe, and I say this very carefully, that at least he's not going in there with an absolute killer. Joe Lozon is a killer. He is a killer, but I don't think that he's going to, and I freaking fingers crossed, he's not going to come in here and land absolutely devastating damage. But he is kind of capable of doing it. Killer on the mat. I don't know. I'm just talking about my hopes now rather than reality, I think.
Right.
And how do you see this fight going, Harry? We should have started with these fights. We really started on a high, and now it's depression central here on the preview show. But
Middle act of the preview is a bit drab, and then we'll get excited for the prelims.
Yes,
stick with us, friends.
Yeah, please stick with us. We got
It's rough, isn't it? It's rough. I mean, like, this is a matchup that Donald Cerrone should be fucking winning. You know, styles wise, he's longer. He hits harder. His kicks are better. And whilst he can grapple, Donald Cerrone can actually grapple, right? But fuck me, he looks old, doesn't he? Like, we can do all the technical analysis you want here, but I don't really want to. I don't need to see this fight. I don't need to see either of them fighting, to be honest. I don't even know what to say. I just feel a bit sad about the whole thing. Look, they're going to get in. They're going to have a scrap. I picked Donald by decision just because I feel as though if he's ever going to go out on a high, it's this kind of matchup. And I try as much as possible to look at skill for skill. And skill for skill, Donald should be winning this fight. But, Son at the weigh-ins, tears, this, that, the next thing. It's not a good look, is it? And this is a Donald that we know has struggled with mental preparation for fights. He came out this week and said Conor gave him a way out of the octagon and he took it knowingly. I don't see what's changed. I really don't see what's changed. And Donald has been in some absolutely crazy wars. He lives a crazy lifestyle outside of the octagon. And I just hope that this is it. I just hope that this is it. And I'm not one, and I shouldn't be one for telling fighters to retire, but I'd like Donald to retire,
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And I think you would agree as well, Spencer. Would you think this should be the swan song one way or another for Cowboy? Will it be? It's yet to be seen, but hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully it doesn't go that bad for him.
I mean, the thing that really, and I only really figured it out or noticed it yesterday in writing my predictions for this, and I've been on Joe Lozon from the start of this because I think Donald Cerrone is at that point of being diminished. Between the two of them, Joe Lozon has the most recent win, and Joe Lozon hasn't fought in over 2 years. And you can make the argument that Donald was fighting some elite competitors in there and some very talented fighters in there. And I say this next part with no disrespect to the gentleman I'm going to name, but he was also in there with Nico Price and Alex Morono, and Alex Morono got him out of there on short notice in a hurry. And now he's going down to 55, where my guess is his mindset is, I'm going to be the bigger fighter. I'm not going to be outpowered. I'm not going to be outstrengthed, especially against a guy like Joe, who is more crafty than powerful. The problem is, as I remember after the Alex Morono fight, Donald Cerrone saying, my brain wants to do it. My brain tells me, but my body just can't. And when you get that point, that's it. Go. Run as far the fuck away as you can, because your head is going to convince you, and I'm stealing from Pulp Fiction, but it's pride fucking with you. And it's going to tell you, I can go out there and get one more. And it's how you end up getting hurt. And as much as it's funny, as much as a lot of people were taken by his tears this week and really, bolstered by, oh, he's got his son here, and it worries me. It scares me a little bit, because this is the first time he's going to see and really understand what Dad's doing. And I'm worried that Dad gets hurt. Because
this is the hurt game too, right?
This isn't like, even if he wins, he's going to see Dad get hurt. And we've seen so many of these guys have their children there and their young children there, where their kids just, you don't want to see your dad get hurt. And if that's on your mind too, and you're Cowboy and you're in there, my boy's watching me, does he look for a way out if something's going sideways?
It's very
and so
true. It's very
it
true.
just like I like the way Joe Lozon has talked about this fight. I like the way he has explained his decision to come back. I thought he had the opportunity after the win over Jonathan Pierce in Boston, in his hometown, to just, that's it. He's opted to come back, and I appreciate that he said, look, I'm not saying I'm done, but I'm not saying I'm going to fight again. This made sense. I'm here. That to me is the more understandable decision-making process than what Cowboy's doing. And I think we see the difference between those two thought processes and the two positions these guys are in later tonight.
I think when it comes down to Joe Lozon, he has, and no disrespect to Donald Cerrone, intelligent in his own right, but Joe Lozon has that level of intelligence, I think, to realize and won't let his ego get in the way when he truly knows that the time is right. Whereas that what we're seeing with Cowboy Cerrone is just
Joe Lozon just doesn't define himself strictly by being a fighter.
exactly.
That's
it. That's
sadly what it is. Like, I know Donald's got a lot of other things on the go, and those things have been productive for him. But his be all and end all is, I'm Donald fucking Cerrone, and I just go out and get in fist fights, and I am the guy that says anyone, anywhere, anytime. I mean, he said it years ago. I got that first win, and I've been chasing that high since. He's still chasing that high, and he will continue to chase it until the drugs win.
True that. And unfortunately for Donald, that drug, there's no drug that can cure the damage that he's going to be taking in this fight or past fights as well. So let's fucking bring this back up. Let's get this going, guys.
Remember how excited we were to start?
Started with these fights and then maybe move to the main card. But that's the reality of the fight game. Sometimes, fights get you excited. Sometimes fights get you sad. And a fighter I'm excited to see is the return of Andre Fiaglio, who is set to welcome Cameron Van Camp into the UFC. Not the nicest of welcome presents for Cameron Van Camp coming into the UFC here. An absolute killer in Andre Fiaglio. We've seen him in there against Miguel Baeza, getting the knockout win. Baeza is a great fighter, good fighter. He let his guard down and bang, Fialo got him out of there. Savage power. We seen him against Michel Pereira competing as well. They're really looking to get Fiaglio on the horse and onto a win streak here in the middle or the welterweight division, excuse me. Yeah, I mean, what do you think, Harry? This is a tough one for Cameron Van Camp coming in here, and this is, in my opinion, a tee-up fight for Fiaglio to kind of get a run in the 170-pound division.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Shawnee and I were talking about Baeza and Fiaglio before, and he was high on Baeza, and I was high on Fiaglio, and
I was high on Baeza as well myself, to be honest. I was surprised to see him going in there and fighting like he fought against Fiaglio, and it cost him in the end, to be honest.
Right, but I think Fiaglio is good. Like, I genuinely think he's good. I think he hits hard. I think defensively there are some things to fix, but he hits hard. He moves well, and his setups are pretty nice. He throws lots of straight shots, and in a he's not going to blow any doors off, but he's certainly going to be in and around some interesting and fun fights in sort of maybe just outside the rankings or just inside the rankings. I don't know too much about Van Camp, but going back and having a look at his record and having a quick browse through some of his fights, he's probably getting whacked. Let's be honest. He's probably getting whacked. Do you know what I mean? Like, it feels like Van Camp's the new Jai Herbert, right? Just come in and get thrown to the fucking wolves and let's see what happens. You know what I mean?
That's it. Like, we had that focus on Reese McKee and Jai Herbert and everybody like that. But, this is happening across the board in the UFC. Is these new guys are coming in and having to face absolute killers from the get-go. And it's like sink or swing, baby, in this fight. You know what I mean? For Cameron. I think, with Fiaglio, I think Sean Sheehan had mentioned before, his striking does remind him of some of the movement and strikes of Conor McGregor. I can see that. I really like the fact that Fiaglio doesn't waste any movement with his footwork, doesn't waste any shots. And you know, when you got the power that he has, it's going to be interesting to see. They're lining them up here for a big KO on the headliner of the prelims. Is that the way you see it, Spencer?
Yeah, this feels like a big juicy peach right across the center of the plate for him to just. I mean, poor Cameron Van Camp. Signed a year ago. His first fight kind of falls through, doesn't come together. And then he gets this on short notice as well. So it's not like he's even had a camp. This is 100%. That guy's healthy. He's coming off a good win. Let's get him out there and let him smash somebody else. And then he gets into some of these bigger fights in the division because he acquitted himself well in that debut. Like, to go out there and win the opening round against Michel Pereira, who is on a nice run, tells you kind of where he's at. It sets that baseline for where he's at. The win over Baeza put some people on notice and made people recognize. I think I agree with Harry that it's kind of a lower third of the rankings or just outside of it. And there's lots of really entertaining fights there. There's lots of competitive, fun fights there. And I think Fiaglio is going to be one of those guys that maybe he doesn't make a run at the title. Maybe he doesn't even make a run at the top 10, but he's in those consistently entertaining, perfect spot for these kinds of fights. Send us into the pay-per-view on a bang, kick off the main card of a pay-per-view with an exciting fight, be a fixture on the main card of fight night events, and see what happens. And this 100% feels like, let's get this guy out here, get him rolling, and then do some more stuff with him in the second half of the year.
Just before we segue on, sorry if I can, I'd be very interested to see Fiaglio against the winner of the next fight. Give me that.
Agreed.
Yes, 100%. And on to the next fight. Something that Chaos Williams and Paulo Fiaglio have is a win over Miguel Baeza in their last fights. He's coming in here against Randy Brown. Randy Brown has been looking real good lately. You know, he had that loss to Vicente Luque. And, you know, has really responded well and has put on two dominant performances, one over Alex Cowboy Oliveira and the other over Jared Gooden. I'm more high, to be honest, on Randy Brown coming into this fight as I am on Chaos Williams. Williams obviously started off his UFC tenure with a few monster KOs, hasn't had his own way, but, you know, that win over Miguel Baeza, you know, that was a good win. To be honest, you know, he went toe to toe with Baeza. Baeza got caught again, which that's probably a conversation for another day. But I see Randy Brown as someone who can progress in the welterweight division, whereas I see Chaos Williams fighting kind of at this level for the majority of his UFC tenure before he gets cut, to be honest. And that's the way I see it. Look, don't come after me, Chaos, if you hear this, but I don't want to.
He can't defend the heel hook, so you fucking could probably break his leg, mate. Don't worry about it.
That's true, but I think, you know, in kind of ways, like you guys said, this is kind of Randy Brown's fight to lose. I think he has the tools to make this difficult for Chaos Williams. It might be accidentally on purpose why this fight is ahead of the Fialo fight, and we may see these two guys, or the winner of both fights, going against one another somewhere down the line. Spencer, what's your general consensus on the fight? How do you see it going down?
Yeah, I think Randy Brown has more ways to win. He's somebody that I think we talk a lot on these previews and on our different podcasts and stuff like that about fighters kind of maturing and growing into themselves and knowing who they are as fighters. And Randy Brown's gotten there now. You can see that in those last few performances. He understands what to do and what weapons he has at his disposal far better than he did early in his career. And sometimes that's just what it takes, is just getting to be 31 and 10 fights deep in the UFC and knowing what works and what doesn't. And I think having those extra avenues outside of just the power shot, outside of just boxing you up and hitting you with a big bomb that Chaos Williams can absolutely hit anybody with and put them out with, it just creates more opportunities for Randy Brown to go out there and get a really good win again on Saturday.
100%. I mean, the surprise factor of Chaos Williams' power is now everybody knows about it, so you can plan for it a little bit better. And I think, you know, Randy Brown would probably have to be careful early on in this fight, but I think as he grinds on Chaos Williams, I'm sure he's going to mix up his striking and grappling, get Chaos trying to move on the back foot. And I would fancy big time Randy Brown to win this. And, he could try and go out there and make a real statement, couldn't he, Harry, and get Chaos Williams out of there.
Yeah, and I really think he can, to be honest. Chaos Williams' grappling is a lot of athleticism and very little technique. For Randy Brown is somebody that really interests me because he's somebody that the UFC have sort of really done right by him. He came in and, he had a very early test against Bilal Muhammad, loses a unanimous decision. Fine, no problems. Freak loss to Nico Price in just one of the craziest positions you've ever seen. Then goes away and has a slow build, loses to Vicente Luque on his next step up. Fine. Again, has been built a little bit slower. And now we're here at this fight. And this is, again, just like another test for him. Another test to be like, okay, here's another big puncher. You're long, you're rangy, you can kick well, you're a pretty solid grappler. Where are we? And it feels as though Randy has made lots and lots and lots of steady improvements throughout his career. He's built a nice record in the UFC. And as you said, he can come out here, he can go look good against Chaos Williams, I imagine. Obviously, the power of Chaos Williams is a problem. He's tough, he's durable, he's happy to stick in there. But skill for skill, Randy Brown is absolutely the better fighter here. And I would expect him to, what are the odds on a Randy Brown sub? Anyone? If we haven't got him to up to, don't worry about it. Don't look at him. But that would be my call. Against Baeza, Chaos Williams did not look great defending leg entanglements and various other positions. And neither did Baeza look great finishing them. Let's just add that. But Randy Brown is a good grappler, a good submission grappler. And if it hits any grappling exchanges, I suspect him to have a big window of opportunity.
Indeed. About as rare at this time as a Donald's Cowboy Cerrone win is a 145 pounds women's fight. But we have one on this card. Macy Chiasson takes on Norma Dumont. And, it's going to be an interesting battle at 145. We're seeing a lot more, Spencer, 145 pound women's fights popping up now over the last couple of cards. Are they trying to get this division going again? How do you see this fight going down?
Before I get to that, plus 250 on Randy Brown, where I'm looking, where I have an account.
Bet the house, lads.
Put the house on it.
Bet the house.
We'll all be recording this outside next week after putting the house.
Chaos Williams lands a bomb in the first 30 seconds and we're all broke. I'm excited to see this division. Like I just commit to this division. Like this is a shit or get off the pot situation for me. Commit to the division or just be done with it, because these one-offs and these occasionals don't make sense. And I think both of these women should be competing in this weight class. Norma Dumont missed when she tried to go down to bantamweight for her second fight in the UFC. She's looked good fighting at this weight since. Macy Chiasson missed last time out against Raquel Pennington, and it became a featherweight fight. Or no, it was booked as a featherweight fight because Rocky took it short notice and she still missed. So clearly she is a big, thick, strong woman that should be fighting at 45. So just commit to it. The problem is, of course, the rest of the talent in this division, which is shallow to begin with, are spread out across a whole bunch of organizations, and it's impossible to have more than about 6 or 8 fighters. And so I would love to see the commitment to it. And this is one I actually have no idea how this plays out, and it's why I'm so excited about this fight, because I'm interested in both of these women. I think Macy Chiasson has room to grow. I love the team at Fortis MMA and Safe Saud. I think they do a great job of getting the most out of their athletes, and I want to see if there is more that Macy has. And look, Norma Dumont has beaten Felicia Spencer and Aspen Ladd in consecutive fights and done it pretty handily. And those are two very good fighters. Regardless of what you think of this division, they're two pretty good fighters. And so is she for real? Is she a contender? It's hard to say because there's nobody else in the division. But we'll get a couple answers here later this afternoon or later this evening about both of these women and probably the fate of the division.
100%, very well said. I don't think there's too much to add to that. We'll move on to the next fight. I'll bring Harry in. I'll be flashing the red sirens on Twitter for this one, because this is a banger alert on the prelims, and that's Brandon Royval versus Matt Schnell in the 125-pound division. Great fight. isn't it, Harry? How do you see it kind of all playing out?
Fucking chaos is how this is going to play out, lads. Absolute fucking chaos. Brandon Royval does not know how to fight measured or sensibly. He's like Lewis Smoker if Lewis Smoker was good. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Anyone?
Shout out to Lewis Smoker fighting David Grant next week. Let's go.
Let's go.
Probably getting fucking left hooked into oblivion by Davy Grant. Shout out fucking Davy Grant fighting Lewis Smoker next week. Let's fucking go. But look, Brandon Royval, I just hope Schnell chooses to grapple just a little bit. Just give me a little bit, just a taste. Schnell is somebody that can follow a game plan really well. Really beautiful kicking game, really beautiful body kicks. Straight shots, lovely. Moves his feet well, moves his head well. I don't think he's an elite fighter in that division. He's a very good fighter, but I don't think he's somebody that can win a title or move up towards that division. I don't think Royval can do the same. Royval's it strikes me a little bit as a bit of a Gaethje, right? He's coming in to be entertaining rather than to win belts. I think he'll say, "Oh, I want to win a belt. I want to do this. I want to be a champion. I want to be whatever." But his fighting style tells me slightly different. I'd love to see Royval be able to take some of the control of the madness and implement the madness when time is right and be able to fight slightly more measured, but we're probably never going to see that. And I'm absolutely fine with that also, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I don't even want to break this down technically. I just think it's a fucking banger of a fight and I'm really, really excited for it.
Absolutely, and I am as well. Like, I'll bring you in, Spencer. I think it's important to get your opinion, especially on this fight. It's the diamond in the rough on the prelims card for me. I love 125-pound fights. You know, we don't play MMA mats too much, but both of these guys have fought Rodrigo or Bontorin in the last fight. Excuse me. Royval picked up the split decision. Obviously, Matt Schnell lost the unanimous decision. Who are you leaning towards in this fight? Because, you know, like I said, we don't play MMA mats. This fight could literally go any way. And Matt Schnell, when he is on, is a phenomenal fighter. What I do agree with Harry, I struggle to see him being championship material. But, you know, on his day, he's a super dangerous fighter, as is Brandon Royval.
Yeah, I mean, same as Harry said, I see this being two cats thrown in a bag and let's just watch them tumble around. Like, just going to be all kinds of fun. I agree that Matt Schnell probably isn't a contender, and I do agree with Harry's assessment that Brandon Royval is probably, to me, similar to Jeremy Stevens during his featherweight run, right? Can get to number 6, can get to number 7, super entertaining, tough out for anybody he fights. All he's done is fight top 10 opponents. Has a win over Kai Kara France that seems like a lot of people kind of forget about it. I think he has more tools. I think he has more weapons in this fight. But as you've both said properly, Matt Schnell is a good fighter and a dangerous fighter when he's locked in and when he's focused. I think we get a really entertaining, I hope, scrambly fight because I think there's the opportunity for a lot of really fun transitions, and Brandon Royval will chase submissions. It's not I'm going to be patient. It's I'm going to just dive on things. And Matt Schnell will dive on things and throw up triangles off his back and look for arms and look for legs. And so just give me the two of these dudes in the center of the cage, scrambling around, trying to catch each other, and I will be happy.
Let me fucking bang, bro. That's what the two of these guys are going to say coming in here, and I'm all for it as well. From the small guys at flyweight, we're going up to the heavyweight division. Blaga Ivanov versus Marcus Rodrigo de Lima in the heavyweight division. Harry, these big boys are going to go at it. How do you see it going down?
Well, you know, you can fucking stab a knife through Blaga Ivanov and he doesn't stop coming at you. So I'm not quite sure what de Lima's going to be doing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know why you're laughing.
To be fair, he stopped coming at people for a while because he was in a coma. Look at him now. But he got over it. Shouts to Blago Ivanov.
Absolutely.
Maybe Lima is going to have to come packed with some machetes or something like that. I don't know.
Look, have you ever seen the film Lock, Stock and Two Smoking Barrels?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You know Boris, who just won't fucking die.
Boris the Bullet Dodger.
Boris the Bullet Dodger. That is Blagojevinov, right? He just put a bit of weight on and stopped acting. That's what we're looking at. De Lima is all right, you know, like, yeah, he hits hard. He got forearm choked by Alexander Romanov, which was very funny. That shouldn't happen, but it does happen. These things do happen in MMA, I guess. Not a great strength of schedule, right? Beat the brakes off the ghost of Ben Rothwell and picked up a win against Maurice Green, who was never really UFC caliber. I think this is going to be a sloppy heavyweight fight, if I'm honest. Neither of these are fantastically technical. Blagoy, do not come after me. But neither of them have a great gas tank. Neither of them have a ton to offer the heavyweight division either. It feels like a fight with very little ramifications for the division or very little jeopardy for either of them. Sure, look, it's a fucking heavyweight sloppy card, sloppy fight. I'm sure it'll be fun for the 45 seconds that the gas tank lasts.
Big meaty men throwing meat. That's what it's going to be. And
Jesus fucking Christ!
Shout out to Biggie.
Yeah, exactly. Spencer, talk to me about Francisco Trinaldo versus Danny Roberts. Trinaldo, man, fucking credit to this guy to be still doing what he's doing at his age. He's kind of had a late career resurgence coming in here against Danny Roberts. I'm leaning towards Danny Roberts in this, but I'm hesitant to kind of doubt Trinaldo, seeing what we see. Harry looks at me. I mean, this is set up for Danny Roberts. Danny Roberts hasn't had the best run of luck lately when it's come to the fights he's had. A lot of fights pull out in the last couple of years. Has got in against Emev and won a split decision. He'll go in against Trinaldo here. An old veteran of the game who's just picked up you look at me strange, Harry, but Trinaldo has only lost one in his last four and has some wins over Bobby Green, Joy Herbert, John McDessie. Not great, although McDessie isn't great, but whatever. I think he's doing well at this stage of his career. 43 years of age, still fighting in the UFC. Fucking Spencer Kai is respect.
100% in his corner, right? Like, gotta root for the 43-year-old here.
You got it. He's in the 43 club himself.
That's
Great
right.
company with Spencer Kai. I mean, this is a fun fight. This is nothing but a fun fight, and I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, it is, and I think it comes down to kind of what version of Danny Roberts we get. Do we get Danny Roberts that can be smart and can use his movement and his length and his speed and all of those different things, and the fact that he's 10 years younger than Francisco Trinaldo, who is 43, and at 43 you move slower, trust me. But I don't know that we get that Danny Roberts, because there are times where Danny Roberts thinks that he is the greatest fighter on God's green earth, and it gets him caught. I don't know. I still don't know about that split decision against Ramazan Emeev. I still remember very vividly some fights where Danny Roberts got face planted. And I think the old man, Francisco Trinaldo, still has the ability to beat a guy like Danny Roberts if Danny Roberts isn't having his best day. And I'm very interested to see I think Francisco Trinaldo is one of those guys that people don't realize and remember how successful he's been overall in the UFC. And you mentioned some of them. There are good names on his resume that he beat. Bobby Green, Paul Felder. I still think he beat Alex Hernandez in San Antonio, where Alexander the Great got a hometown discount. This is a fight to me that maybe we get a little bit of, who's had a good career? Francisco Trinaldo, when he knocks out Danny Roberts.
Indeed. Harry, you're gesturing there. You're shaking your head. You're what are you thinking, sir? A penny for your thoughts.
Danny Roberts feels like he's got, against really sort of medium tier fighters, he'll go out and do what he did to Oliver Enkamp, right? I really remember that. Enkamp was very, very green, a good kickboxing background, but very little MMA experience. And the range, as we know, is so different. And he folded him like a deck chair, right? But then he goes, previously he loses to Mike Perry. Like, Mike Perry's a shithouse. Let's not get this twisted. Let's not get it twisted. Mike Perry, to coin me, your man's trash, right? He's bad. But then on some days, Danny Roberts goes out and fights to the level of his opponent. Okay, the Ameev decision was a controversial one, but he didn't look out of place in that fight, Like, he didn't look like he didn't deserve to be there. He looks like a fighter that should be in that division in the UFC. And then you see him against Claudio Silva. Now, Claudio Silva is a fantastic grappler. I've trained with him personally. He's very, very good on the ground. But Claudio was very tired. And Danny was like, oh, here, let me just grapple with him. Why? What are we doing? Like, what are we doing? It feels as though he has a lot of the physical attributes and not a lot of the mental attributes. So I just don't know what we see here. As Spencer's already alluded to, he can move his feet really well. When he's on, he's long for the division. He's got a really nice jab when he throws it, a clean 1-2. He's got some nice leg kicks. But Trinaldo might just walk him down and he might be like, oh yeah, I don't mind getting knocked out today, and just gets whacked. It's very difficult to know the true level of Danny Roberts, I think. And I mean, we're going to find out. I think it's a 50-50 fight, and it really shouldn't be, It really, really shouldn't be.
Yeah, I agree 100%. An interesting fight between an old veteran and a guy who is Jekyll and Hyde, if you want to call it that way. We don't know which Danny Roberts is going to show up, but we're going to find out in a couple of hours. Spencer, would you please do me the pleasure of talking to us about the remainder of the fights on the card? What fights are you looking forward to on the early prelim section?
So there's two that really jump out for me. Tracy Cortez and Melissa Gatto, because I'm really intrigued by Melissa Gatto. I don't think you win your first two fights in the UFC by stoppage against Victoria Leonardo. Fine. Overmatched. Doesn't deserve to be in the UFC. Isn't UFC caliber. But to go out and finish Sijara Eubanks the way she did, with a beautiful, beautiful kick to the midsection, to be undefeated at this point, to have a win over Carol Hosa, who's done some good things at bantamweight while still being a little bit limited. And I'm not sold on Tracy Cortez, and she's had some good wins. I don't think she beat Erin Blanchfield in their fight in Invicta. I've watched it a bunch of times, and she didn't win. It was bad judging. And so I want to see sort of this, to me, is we find out the levels of each of these women. And flyweight is terrific right now on that side in terms of the young talent working their way up. So I want to see which of these two take a step forward. And then the strawweight fight between Ariane Carnelosi and Lupi Godinez, who trains, an hour away from me here in Vancouver at Titan. Yeah, she's 2-2 in the UFC. She should probably be 3-1, and then the one loss is up a division on a week's notice. So let's cut her some slack. She is an absolute powerhouse. She has zero concern for her own well-being in terms of toughness and grit and let me get in there and fight anybody. Because she also tried to get a fifth fight last year in the middle of the year, and it just didn't happen. So she's ready to go out there and doesn't care about getting hit, doesn't care about being in bad spots, will just continue coming and put it on you. Her sister's wrestled out here where I live in Abbotsford at UFV. She is a very good wrestler. She is a good grappler. And I think this is an interesting fight to me because Carnelosi has looked good on the mats in her last two fights as well. So we kind of see which of these late 20s strawweights takes another step forward. And for me, that's what these fights are all about, is just let's answer some questions. Let's see some development. Let's make some more reads and let's see who's going forward and into bigger fights in the second half of the year.
Indeed, these early fights it's the start of the story for many of these fighters. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see. Harry, I'll just move over to you. Anything to add? And I'm curious to see what your fight of the night is going to be before we wrap it up.
So I think my favorite prelim fight of the ones that you've just mentioned, not, in the lower tier of the prelims, I think is Tracy Cortez versus Melissa Gatto. I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and equally we see a proper test for Tracy Cortez, and we might see a proper test for Melissa Gatto. Who knows? My fight of the night, Jesus. I mean, God, I don't know. To me, fight of the night has to be something that's competitive, right? So, I can't be picking Chandler Ferguson. I just can't be picking it. I think that Randy Brown, Chaos Williams is a bit of a sleeper for fight of the night, but my pick will be the main event. My pick will be Justin Gaethje versus Charlie Olives.
Spencer, your fight of the night, please.
So with my usual caveat that these awards tend to stick around the main card. And so I think it'll probably be the main event if it goes the way we all kind of think it will, of being super competitive. But that Brandon Royval match now fight has the potential to just set the bar and say, come and get me. And if we get some finishes on the main card, those boys could be taking home some extra money.
100%. I'm kind of along the same lines as you, looking at that Royval fight. But realistically thinking, it probably will be the main event who grabs the fight of the night. But, you know, it's a fantastic card. Before we go, I just want to give you a shout out, Spencer. This week, 13 years in the game, my man.
The fucking man. The man.
Congratulate, has gone through the grind. It's an absolute pleasure I can speak for myself, and I'm sure I can speak for Harry, as two guys who are just starting off their journeys. It's a pleasure to be able to come on and speak and talk to the fights, about the fights with you, man. Congratulations on 13 years. Hopefully we have another 13 years and another 13 years on top of that again, where we can continue to break down these fights each and every week. All hail Spencer, as Sean Denny excellently says in the comments section. How does it feel? 13 years, Spencer.
Well, first, thank you, boys. I appreciate it. It's weird that it's been
I haven't even
13
started
years.
complimenting you yet. I'll get my turn. Don't you worry.
So the funny thing is that I'm always able to remember how many years I've been married, because I started writing about this sport full on like a week after I got married. And so always keeps the anniversary in mind. I never forget how far along into marriage. And that's really the first part of this is a lot of the credit, a lot of the thanks goes to my wife, who has put up with me doing this for 13 years and supported me doing this for 13 years. But 13 more and then 13 more again would get us to just the cusp of 70. And that feels about right. Like everybody asks, you know, do you see yourself doing it? I'm going to write until my fingers don't work. I love telling these stories. I'm always going to enjoy this sport. It's been absolutely amazing. I think I've gotten a little better over the years. I think I understand things a little more. Guys like the two of you inspire me to step my game up and keep improving and keep developing, because young fuckers like you are coming after me and looking to me for advice and things like that. So I got to still be in shape to go as best I can at 43. And so here's to many, many years and many decades of the three of us, and Shawnee and Andy and everybody else at the site, and Denny and everybody else that loves this sport the way that I know we do, and cares about this sport the way that I know we do, continuing to do it. So thank you for bringing me into the fold this year, and let's get after it.
Thank you for joining us. I mean, it's like I said, an absolute pleasure for us to be able to come and speak with you and reach out for guidance and advice and everything like that. It truly is a blessing for me and for Harry as well. It kind of wraps up, you know, this is a preview show. It had it all. We had the excitement, we had the sadness, we had the doubt, we had the speculation. We had it all this preview show, and we'll continue to have it all each and every week. We'll be back once again next week to break down the UFC card, but I don't even want to talk about now that. It's all about tonight. It's all about UFC 274. Fantastic night of fights. We hope you all enjoy it. We hope that everything goes to plan and the fights go well and everyone has a good time. And I want everybody to go over to our sponsors at Eat All Real Nutrition Bars. EatAllReal.com. Enter in the code word Severe MMA and get you some. Thanks once again, Spencer and Harry, for joining me as always. I love doing this shit. I love doing this show. And this is what it's all about. Everybody enjoy the fights. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you again next week.
All hail Spencer Kite.